All right, good afternoon, everybody. Michael Schreck here with CSMG, and we're going to go through episode 7 of Emerging Opportunities in College Athletics and Esports. We have a wonderful group of panelists with us today that I'll introduce in a second, but these folks are going to be discussing topics similar to name, image, and likeness, the growth of esports teams and competitions, the current and future digital media landscape, and new paths across academics and diversity as it relates to college athletics and esports. As I mentioned, we are joined by a wonderful panel, and thank you all for being here with us today. In no particular order, the first person up is Tom Wistersill, who's currently the commissioner of the Big Sky Conference. Tom has held executive leadership positions at Learfield Sports. He was at the University of Akron, University of Minnesota, and the University of Wisconsin prior to becoming the commissioner. Tom is extremely forward-thinking and progressive. And Tom, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Next up is Dr. Christopher Parker. Chris Parker is currently the president and chief executive officer of the National Junior College Athletic Association. Chris has been in higher ed for the past 15 years and shown tremendous leadership and growth wherever he's gone, working across several different initiatives that touch on esports and what college governances are doing to continue to emerge. Dr. Chris Parker, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you all for having me.
Daniel Evans is our next panelist. Daniel is an entrepreneur, an executive, and also an avid gamer. Daniel is the president and chief executive officer of Reely Corporation. Daniel, we thank you for your strategic alliance and partnership with CSMG, and thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Hello, everybody.
Bubba Gaeddert is currently the executive director of Varsity Esports Foundation. VEF works in the education business with organizations and schools, really helping them and educating folks on healthy lifestyles, mental health, community, STEM, and digital citizenship. Thank you for being with us today.
So glad to be here. Thank you.
And certainly, last but not least, he's a media legend, and he jokes every time I say this, but I'm being serious, is Jimmy Lynn. He's currently the co-founder and vice president of Kiswe Mobile. He's an industry veteran of 25 plus years in sports and entertainment. He was a senior executive at AOL for the launch there, and he is a professor at Georgetown University. Jimmy, thanks so much for taking time, and it's great to see you.
Thank you, Mike. I just think back that lunch that I had with you and Ray back at the Hotel Nomad before you were launching CSMG like 5 years ago. So it's so awesome to see the great success you guys have accomplished so far. Kiswe is great. Really happy to partner with you guys.
Thank you, Jimmy. I appreciate that. And moderating today's panel is Chief Operating Officer and my co-founder at CSMG, Ray Katz. Ray, I'm going to turn it over to you to take it away. Thank you for everybody for your time.
Thank you, Mike, and excited to be here. We have a tremendous panel, very excited to hear their perspectives on emerging opportunities in college sports, both traditional and esports, especially given some of the changes happening during this current COVID time period. So I'd love to start with Tom and then work kind of around, since there's the most change going on in your conference right now and around it. Let's talk about some emerging opportunities as you see it, both during and then post this post-COVID period as it relates to, but certainly including, but not anything else is great. NIL, esports, fan engagement, etc. Love to hear from you, Tom.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Great to see everyone. Thanks for joining us. Obviously, the craziest time of our lives right now, right? I mean, there's just so much happening in the space of college sports, so many changes every day. Really hard to kind of track what's going on. I guess I'm always reminded during these times of you got to control what you can control, and we always talk about two things you can control: your attitude and your effort. But it is such a fascinating time in college athletics with the changes that continue to dominate the headlines. In our conference, we have suspended football until the spring. Hopefully we can find a way to pull that off in Division I football with an F championship as well, coordinating with the NCAA. But nonetheless, life goes on, right? Our biggest challenge as an industry in higher education is how are we going to open campuses this fall? How are we going to safely bring students to campus and control an outbreak? And I have a feeling, when you think about the thousands of campuses around the country, some are going to have obviously some dramatic outbreaks. Others will have much easier times controlling that. And so within athletics, as we look towards trying to maximize opportunities, we first need to identify what opportunities there will be, whether it's for our partners as sponsors or donor opportunities, ticket sales opportunities, all of those things that are that might not happen this fall. And how do we engage those people on a daily and weekly basis to keep them a part of what we're trying to do on our campuses? Some of the major Division I FBS institutions are right now faced with looking at 60, 70, 80% loss of revenue. And so how do you overcome that as a department? Some of ours are looking at 40, 50% losses. And so, again, back to controlling the controllables, what can we do in the short term to make sure that our people are engaged, that our staff is still functioning, and that we're able to deliver on some of our promises, knowing that much of the virus and the outcomes is still up in the air. And that's our biggest challenge right now. We talk about it every day with just about every day with our athletic directors. Our presidents have been engaged almost weekly in calls trying to figure this out. We'll make a decision on our other fall sports probably this week. But nonetheless, all of those changes are impacting us dramatically right now in real time because our budgets for most Division I schools seem to be in peril. And so real-time action is what needs to be delivered in a very confusing world. So don't think I've said anything that nobody doesn't know, but that's real-time what's happening on campuses at the Division I level right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Parker, how would you compare and contrast with what's going on in real time across the NJCAA?
A lot of the same that he just touched on, but what we have done is go ahead and build a platform for our fall championships to take place in the spring. With football, volleyball, soccer, all taking place in the spring. It's going to be unique. It's going to be stressful. It's going to be time consuming for our colleges, hard on student athletes, hard on administrators, the taxing of student athletes with all the championships and seasons going on at once, especially with rosters like football and soccer. But we're giving them that opportunity. What the dominoes that always play into effect are, what are the D1s going to do? Are they going to have a season? How does that recruiting period affect our schools? And we know with such a high percentage go on to play at NCAA or NAIA schools, and really understanding those logistics and those dynamics. But what I keep reminding people is there's no playbook. And in most of our lives, we all can get to the finish line. We can make adjustments to get to the finish line. But in the case of COVID-19, nobody knows where the finish line is. And that's the biggest obstacle and the biggest battle for all of us as administrators, coaches, even student athletes, of where the finish line is and why does it keep moving on us.
And then Bubba, from your seat, how do you see all this evolving? What are some of the emerging opportunities related to esports or otherwise, as you see from your extensive career across the college sports landscape?
Yeah, Ray, great question. I really look, I think as a former college athlete and somebody's working D1 and NAIA schools, I look at how many schools and conferences like Tom's and other ones that just came out in the news yesterday, closing down sports. And I think about in the high school space where I work heavily, how, a football student cost for a student to participate in football is like $500 per student, but really in esports is about half that. So when you look at a high school space, the cost for an esports athlete or a student or that activity is much lower. So when I think about all the colleges that are represented here today, I think about your opportunity there for a low cost, low entry, low barrier opportunity for many students and many student athletes that potentially like NBA 2K or like Madden, who we have a lot of student athletes that I teach. When I teach at the university, I teach out here in Kansas City, that love those kind of games, that also want to compete still because they're not able to compete on the field. And it's a very large revenue generating opportunity for your school as a whole, and with a very low cost to start. Plus groups like CSMG and NJCAA and ECAC, they're very good about making those opportunities available for all students. And the students could also help pay for that because they want to be involved, and they will potentially pay and bring their own equipment to be a part of those activities, as well as you can put it under your athletic department or your student life department, whatever it may be. But athletics can have a big opportunity here to fill that gap for those student athletes for sure.
Thank you. That's really interesting stuff. Let's sort of evolve the question and almost combine the general emerging opportunity overview with the next subject, which is digital media. So maybe we'll start with Dan and talk about how you see the emerging opportunities sort of driven through digital media, what Reely does, articulate the technology behind it, and then how your platform is transforming both traditional and esports highlights. You're on mute.
I am. I apologize. So I think the biggest thing that schools need to understand from a sports and an esports perspective is you have to own your moments, right? So whether it's sports or esports, it's about building conversations about your brand. I think that's the biggest thing that we need to do. When it comes to digital media, it's about creating a brand for your school. And the brand is not only about drawing partnerships and opportunities, it's also the brand that your kids relate to, right? So when they're going to school, they want to wear the logos, they want to wear the gear, they want to wear the merch, they want to take it home, and they want to be part of that community. Because honestly, with colleges these days, you buy more you're buying more of the network, as much the network as you are the education. So it's important for you to own your moments. And I think when you come to the sports world, there's interesting opportunities because you don't have content this year. There's ways to repackage and repurpose your content to do like a red zone channel, like the Big Sky Conference sound. Like you could bring that together and say, we're going to take all of last year's game footage and we're going to package it up into like a red zone game type experience to where we have the best plays and we're cutting to highlights and create kind of a cool package where you can continue to engage your audience. And then from the esports perspective, Bubba's right. Like you have a great opportunity to bring kids together. And again, it's about building that community. It's about creating that relationship between the school and the kids that are coming, right? So it's very low cost to get involved in esports. You build tournaments. There's plenty of platforms out there that you can leverage to get in there. And then from Reely's perspective, what we do is help you engage that audience. It's help you to own those moments so that, when it comes to sports, it's real-time highlights that are done using AI and machine vision, right? So it's not about somebody having to sit there or editors having to sit on premise and sit there and cut highlights and package them up and put them out there. All of that is automated for you, right? When it comes to esports, the same thing. We had a great experience last night with the ECAC. They ran their Valorant tournament, and it was great to see this stream of real-time highlights coming out of the event. And this just happened, come and do. This just happened, come and do. And it really engages the audience because, you need the video, you need to get social, you need to bring everybody together. And I think the digital media is kind of where you can do that.
No, absolutely. And then finally, Jimmy, last in this sort of question area, but certainly way far from least, since you are kind of the original digital native, as they call it, having been in such a prominent position at AOL and now driving Kiswe Mobile and teaching all this stuff at Georgetown and really being on the cusp of everything that's going on with Monumental. What's your perspective on some of the biggest opportunities that are coming out from your both academic seat and then your professional seat as well?
Yeah, thanks, Ray. So let me give sort of a two-pronged approach or answer. So as you mentioned, I have both wearing the academic hat and the technology hat. So I'm about to start my 15th year teaching at Georgetown, teaching undergrad business school, our master's program. And then we built out a master's program in sports management. We're the largest program in the world. So got, access to kids from 18 to 28 all the time. And I just have seen them over the last 14 years, how how much they're into gaming and how much that mobile phone has really become the center of the social universe. I like to joke to the students when I first started teaching at Georgetown, MySpace was the hot social networking app. Facebook is brand new. So how we've really seen the evolution. But I work with a lot of the student athletes at Georgetown, the football, men's and women's basketball, and soccer, and watching them, teaching them, mentoring them, going to ball games with them. I just see them less interested in some of these sports events that last 3 hours, 3.5 hours. They're interested more in immediacy. They want things now, and part of that just the way people are again going back to the phone and the way they're using social media. So I've definitely seen an evolution over the last decade. And I give a lot of props in the esports to Lori Baldwin, who's our VP of Strategic Marketing and Partnerships at Georgetown. She joined us from Ohio State about 1.5 years ago, which she built out a tremendous esports program at Ohio State. And so she's been a real, on the cutting edge of in the college sports. We started a esports club team at Georgetown, and she's an expert with the Big East. So it's really interesting to see all the different dynamics that esports can do at the college level. That's getting the students engaged, but also I think to the ADs and the senior people, some of the partnerships that you can create, across campus, and also the partnerships you can create with the different faculty departments within the different schools at a university. I think there's lots of the interdisciplinary, lots of opportunities there. And then also, fundraising from alums is important. So I think on the digital side, really engaging more with your alumni base is important. On the Kiswe side, as you guys know all too well, it's really focused on what we call the cloud-based live media production. So what we've been working, we're in our 7th year. So it's not like we're a brand new company. We've been working for a few years with the NBA. Just give you a quick example with the NBA, they have their games that are broadcast on Turner and ESPN in the US, but when they're broadcast outside the US, they're on League Pass. And in the past, the games were broadcast only in English, and they wanted to be able to put that in local language. It's very expensive and very hard to do. So we created the remote way that casters can call the games off of their laptop at home in the native language. So for instance, casters can call the NBA games in Portuguese. One caster could be in Rio de Janeiro, one's in Connecticut, and they're calling the game. And what we do is the casters get the video feed in off their laptop. They call the game in their native language. We strip out the audio, sync it with the video in the cloud, and you got a perfect sync. It could be up to 4 casters per game. And the NBA's been fantastic to work with. And they love it because it's customizing and localizing the language, whether it's in Portuguese or Spanish or Japanese or Italian or French, and that works great. And so that was going on well. When COVID hit in March, we had to make a pivot as a company. And that's really where we said, hey, our leagues and broadcast companies are our partners, and how can we help them? So they're going to be airing a lot of archive games, but how about if we help freshen the games by letting the casters call in? Again, they do this remotely because you can't travel. And that's sort of the combination of the remote. And I think there's a lot we can explore in the college space, because with revenues down, the colleges have to cut back on expenses. And how can the colleges do remote production using cloud-based production?
Yeah, and certainly we had a great experience working with Kiswe on getting Stony Brook games out there in Mandarin. Yeah. And certainly for everyone out there, great opportunity to bring in sponsors that way more than cover the costs, because it's a very efficient, effective, and seamless, scalable as well, opportunity. Dr. Parker, how can new media open up new opportunities for the NJCAA, and what are some of the great things that you've been doing there, both on the traditional sports side and the esports side, building out the NJCAA network, et cetera?
Well, we're really proud of our relationship with Reely, first and foremost. Appreciate their commitment to the NJCAA and everything that goes on there. And to piggyback some of what Jimmy had to say is, really identifying what the market is. So often we think that casting this wide net's going to reach everybody. While it may reach everybody, it doesn't necessarily touch them in the same points that we want to touch them. We have obviously engaged our student athletes, our fans, our coaches and administrators, but now we have to cultivate more of that elementary, middle, and high school around them understanding what NJCAA is, what NJCAE is, and making sure they understand and respect the opportunities that are afforded by two-year college athletics. We are unique in different cases, but again, that engagement through our digital marketing and digital media and with our new digital network and that kind of stuff, it really is, endless opportunities, but we have to capitalize, and we have to take basically what Jimmy said and really put that best foot forward to, gain their confidence and gain their willingness to learn about the NJCAA, understand the NJCAA, and then promote the NJCAA. More and more people who understand the complete, picture of the NJCAA, we're able to change their understanding through all the digital media. And that's something that we've put a huge priority in, both in staff and with external partners. And it's really starting to show, pay dividends for us as an association.
Yeah, no question. The green screen studio that you have is fantastic as well. And Tom, how would this extend to the Big Sky Conference, some of the great opportunities, athletic programs in your conference, and certainly leveraging the enormous number of students and alums that you have across the tight but broad geographical expanse of the Big Sky Conference?
Yeah, we're in 8 states out here out west. So as you said, a broad reach there. So ours has been all about owning our content and becoming our own content creative group. We hired a new position this past year, Director of Digital and Broadcast Media, so we could create our own content and become our own voice, both socially and digitally. We've created a number of ideas. We have one of our staff members who's been with us for a long time, John Casper. He does a classics with Casper, where we're doing something historical with something that happened in the conference over the last 20 years. And he always has some fun with that. We're able to attach a sponsor to it. I've gone around to our athletic programs. We started competing with the commish, which is gone, I would say, average at best, because my volleyball skills are not great. I also threw the shot put, the weight throw. Some of these did well for a long time ago college basketball player. So nonetheless, for us, it's been about, can we create cool stuff that's fun, that sponsors will attach to, that our people will talk about, that will showcase our conference a little bit, and that's been fun. The second thing we did, just from an esports, we'd never had esports in the conference before, so we launched it last year with League of Legends. We had 9 of our 11 full-time members compete in it, and we learned a lot. Our schools learned a lot, and our presidents really got engaged when we started talking about the retention of students. That's such a key word in colleges right now, and we found that the percentage of college students from a retention standpoint that engage with esports is off the charts. And so that's really given us some hope to grow this around the conference. We got a long ways to go. We're going to tap into some of the expertise on this call here today in the future, but it's a fun venture for us.
Absolutely. And Bubba, how does all these emerging changes in media and emerging opportunities, how does that impact esports from your seat?
Yeah, I just look at back to 2000 when I was, before that, getting recruited into the college space, and social media wasn't around, right? It wasn't, well, I guess MySpace was, right? For our MySpacers out there, like you said earlier. But I look at students now and their recruitment and opportunities. You're not just getting tapes of players anymore for sports. And I know over the years we've had things like Huddle and Max Preps get bigger and bigger for us, in the college space to recruit. But when I look at things like esports, and even maybe you do it now with traditional sports players, is checking out their social media just like you would if you're hiring someone, and seeing how they present themselves. But when it comes to esports, the branding there that we've talked about, branding for your university or your conference, is really, really a big selling point when I think about activation and sponsorship. Colleges have a lot more credibility to pull in new sponsors because of esports that they didn't do with traditional sports. And your development directors at your university on the academic side, always looking to help with a capital campaign of sorts. the ability to get these new tech companies like the ones here today. They can come in and bring some new blood and some new dollars into a program that has a really far-reaching audience when it comes to things like streaming online, like we've heard about here today. But there's a bigger audience outside just the alumni and the people who are attending the school. The Twitch sphere, or whatever you want to call it, for social media and streaming in video games is large. It's very large. If you know the stats, things getting watched online are larger than the Super Bowl. And so I think in the media world, I look back at where we were, where we've come, and branding for a university or a conference or a school or a program, as much as branding for a student you're recruiting, because really these students, in the traditional sense, not all of them go pro into an esports, just like we know in traditional sports the same way. However, there's 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds getting recruited to play pro because of their brand. So you have some competition out there to get good players, so to speak, if your program is a varsity program that's competing heavily. But I think you also have the ability to find really good players who come in that have a brand following that help build up your program. I've seen it happen at dozens of universities. So branding is very big in digital media as well.
That's great, Bubba. And let's kind of shift over to academics, because we kind of touched on recruitment and retention. Jimmy, how do you see all of this taking place with respect to your role as professor at Georgetown? Some new educational paths emerging, some new opportunities to recruit and retain students, not so much at Georgetown, but across the educational business overall as enrollment goes down a bit. Georgetown's certainly a very in-demand school for many reasons, so maybe a little less perspective there, but more just broad as an educator.
Well, first off, I'm jealous of Bubba's microphone because his voice sounds so deep and powerful. So
Thank you.
The other casters are jealous of him. Anyway, no, great question, Ray. I think there's so many great things. And again, I've told you, Lori Baldwin shared some of the research they did at Ohio State. But I think what ends up happening is, creating the club at Georgetown is you have a number of my students now, they don't want to go work in traditional sports. They all want to go work in esports, and they're asking what the opportunities are. And I'm pushing to try to help them find internships and try to help them find entry-level jobs. And there's more and more. And you just look at the pure numbers of esports and how much it's growing. So, Ray, my longtime mentor is Ted Leonsis, the monumental of the Wizards and Caps and Mystics, and what they're doing. The NBA 2K is tremendous. But Ted's been very vocal out there about saying how big the esports industry is and what they're doing with Team Liquid and how the numbers are globally. They're very powerful facts. But I think if you look at from a faculty perspective and you're looking to create programs or create opportunities, you can take like Georgetown's a Jesuit school with traditional courses taught in the business school, but there are a number of courses that are taught in the undergraduate program that give opportunities to students. So like on the business side, it could be business development, it could be accounting and finance, marketing, sales and sponsorship. And I think the most important one is analytics. That's definitely a growth area at Georgetown, not just undergrad, but in our MBA program too. And sort of, that's one of the trends going on, I think, at a higher level is you look at, when the leagues do deals with networks, and they talked about this in the NBA Tech Summit this past February in Chicago. When the leagues are out there, they do great deals with TV networks, make lots of money, but they don't really know who their customers are, right? Because the TV networks can't tell you who your customers are. But if you're going through a mobile app or through your OTT, you know all kinds of stuff about your customers. So if I'm a league commissioner or a university president or university AD, I'm really interested in the analytics of who's following my teams, because there's so much more you can do. There's much more targeted advertising you can do, because you know so much more about the customer, the e-commerce opportunities, the outreach that you can do on a global level. So I just talked on business, but on the engineering side, there's a ton you can do on the design side, from the user interface, e-commerce design, to animation, to just programming, production design. I mean, there's so much. And then some programs are creating esports programs, which are fantastic. There's obviously the coaching and playing, but there's, to Bubba's point, the broadcasting, the narrowcasting. And I think, another opportunity for college students is what's going on by being able to produce games remotely and call games remotely. And I think that's what some of the leagues, like they're pushing the envelope with Kiswe is, how do we get casters that call games that come from different demographics? So one quick example is PGA Tour. When they came back playing, we did a multicast with PGA on Twitter with 9 different casters. So you're reaching 9 different demos. We had Darius Rucker from Hootie and the Blowfish, Annika Sorenstam. So you had different casters from different demographics, but you're really just broadening your reach. But then it goes back to analytics. You know who's tuning into you, right? So that's sort of a path. And obviously, I mentioned before, just remote production and event production, event management. So there's a lot of things that you can study at a university that are applicable to esports.
That's great, Jim. And Dr. Parker, how would you add to this and kind of view as to some emerging opportunities related to maybe STEM programming, where a 2-year degree will get someone all the education that they really need to be a programmer or something of that nature? What are you seeing in terms of emerging curriculum areas based on some of your broad higher ed background?
Yeah, so it's unique because when I was the dean of academics, we had a video game production program. This was before any explosion of esports. And you kind of look at it from a presidential perspective of a college, and you think, where can I grow my enrollment? Where is their interest? And when you take the esports and you factor it in, and you look at, well, are they interested in general studies? Are they interested in programming? Are they interested in IT? What is it that they're exactly interested in? It's endless boundaries. I mean, there's so many opportunities out there for all of this type of engagement, but what makes the students tick? Why is it that they're there? But for the esports, would they enroll in college? How do we get them there? But like you said, the biggest one is the programming and the business analytics that we kind of see at the 2-year college level that are growing interest for those students who are competing in esports. And, the intelligence level of these individuals is very high. Their ability to problem solve, their ability to navigate issues and really dive down into the mathematics and like you said, that programming of stuff is very high level thinking. And when you take that seat as a college administrator or college president, you think, is esports worth my time? Well, absolutely, it's worth your time. But more importantly, it's worth looking at what type of student you're recruiting into those classes or even starting those new programs around. Because really, it is a truly engaging student who has a very high intellectual ability to problem solve and do things. So it's quite a unique dynamic when we take a strong look at what type of student we're engaging.
No, that's great stuff. Bubba, what would you add in terms of academics and esports? Maybe talk about your recent partnership with William Collis or any others.
Yeah, I'd say, even to touch on what Dr. Parker said, you look at, if you're trying to grow your fan base and grow maybe revenue, think about all the students at your school or the potential, helping admissions to bring in more students, the ability for revenue generation and fans into the fold that may come to your games, may not come to your games. But then you have an opportunity to have a new type of program that brings in a lot more and adds that belonging that we're talking about. There's lots of opportunities. When I look at, there's a really great book out there you can get online. If you purchase it through a link on my LinkedIn, you can support our charity, which we're a nonprofit charity. It's called the Book of Esports. A really good background look at how esports started. And I thought I knew a lot of stuff about gaming and whatnot from years of my dad working at Radio Shack when I was a kid. But it's a really good book called The Book of Esports by William Collis. And I'd say when it comes to academics, I love that side of it, because colleges can, just as much as we've talked about, where you can have a sports management degree, like at Georgetown, you have your really great program. You can have esport programs, but I really want to stress the importance that some colleges are struggling with, where they are just adding an E in front of their communications class and calling it an esports communication class and giving a credit towards a minor. Make sure you're really working with nerds like me who want to help grow a program, who have academic background, because that side of it is really big. I know Neil, he has esports programs at his university, but academics for us, even in the high school space, we get to put out a lot of content and curriculum, free curriculum created by a principal and a teacher here in Wichita, Kansas. It's a curriculum you can download on our website free for high schools. It's being adapted for colleges and middle schools right now, and you can download it. It's on Microsoft Educator. And so academics is huge because you can encompass so many different segments of your university, whether it be a minor, a major, all these different opportunities around. Because like we said earlier, you take NBA out of the middle of this career wheel and you plug in esports, it's all the same stuff.
Yeah. Just to kind of build on what you said about revenue and the importance of that and the unique challenges now, Tom, let's kind of come back to you and talk about some of the unique challenges, but really more so the opportunities moving forward as we get out of COVID, given, again, the size of your academic base, the students, the alums, and then sort of even touching beyond some of those things on the NIL opportunities, because in reality, in many of your markets, the university is in fact the professional or most prominent team. So I think NIL could be a massive opportunity there as well.
Yeah. So yeah, lots of moving parts within the revenue piece right now at the collegiate level, obviously because of COVID and the delays and that sort of thing. So what we do really feel like there will be a huge thirst for live sports with this system. And people will appreciate live sports like they never have before, which is great. And that will help drive viewers, that will help drive sponsors, and ultimately drive revenue back to the conferences and the schools. Short term, that is what we have to fix, right? We got to get well enough. We got to figure out a way to do this. If we're not going to play football this fall, we have to make sure we play basketball this winter. And the NCAA, as everyone knows, is built on the backs of the NCAA basketball tournament, which didn't happen last March, as we all know. And that desperately needs to happen as we get to 21 for the survival of this enterprise. The interesting thing about, Ray, you touch on the NIL piece, is that's probably a longer reaching impact on college sports than COVID. I think if you look at 2 years from now, hopefully, God forbid we're still dealing with COVID, hopefully 2 years from now, that's far behind us. But the impact of how name, image, and likeness settles into the college space is going to dictate our future. What does that look like for our student athletes to be able to manage their own name, image, and likeness, to be able to profit off of that, and yet not enter a pay-for-play situation for college athletics? That's not the model. It's not what it's built on. It's built as part of the educational opportunity within our schools. And so it's very, very difficult for us to envision how that we keep this out of recruiting, for example. How does school A not say to the student athlete, hey, you come to us, you're going to be the spokesperson for the Toyota dealerships of Wisconsin. And Michigan saying, oh, no, come be the Ford spokesman here in the state of Michigan. And so how do we manage that going forward? That is going to tell the tale for the future of college athletics, more than COVID will. And so it's unfortunate that we're dealing with both of these very difficult subjects right now. But as I look out into the future, the name, image, and likeness and how we manage that, that will, like I said, that will tell our future. And we have to remain some focus on that while we're figuring out a way to get back to having live college sports.
Yeah, no question, Tom. I totally agree with you. You're going to see the Marketing Accountability Standards Board come out with an article that I'm co-authoring with Tony Pace shortly in the next 2 to 3 weeks. It's going to cover this in great detail. Dr. Parker, you get some prominent baseball players especially. How do you see name, image, and likeness impacting NJCAA opportunities? And then how does that sort of dovetail with some of the great content that's been out there, Last Chance U, et cetera, in terms of driving revenue?
It's quite unique. I spent all day Friday on meetings about this and all this morning on meetings about this. And a lot of legislators forget about two-year college athletics and don't understand that Major League Baseball drafts are per quota covered by two-year college athletes, more per capita than anywhere else. And looking at those dynamics, what does it do for us? It's going to be that double-sided domino, because we're already in a position of states are implementing it. It's already passed in Florida. That's what I spent my morning dealing with. It's already passed in Florida. So we're kind of waiting on the feds to really figure out what's best for everyone. But remember that two-year college athletes are here. And why does that matter so much? It matters so much that if the NCAA has one policy and we have another, kids can't transfer. They lose their amateur status, or they can't transfer back. Maybe the NCAA allows it. Then they're not eligible to come back if things don't work out and they need a year of junior college. So it's that dynamic. It's very, very double-sided and puts us in a very hard spot. But like I said, we have a lot of confidence in all those we're working with, that we all can get on the same page and provide the best avenues of support for our student athletes as possible.
And no question. And then also in the academically, or I should say fiscally challenging areas, Bubba, HBCU institutions are a very important part of the fabric of our country.
Mm-hmm.
And what are some of the things in terms of challenges, solutions that are available for esports programs to maybe help? I know there's been a bunch of activity in the MEAC and SIACs coming on, et cetera, with some more esports programs.
Yeah, I think those conferences are definitely leading the way in HBCU for traditional sports for years. I definitely want to touch on HBCU. I want to give one last name, image, and likeness thing about esports. So if we go back to even like O'Bannon and Donald DeLahaye, who did YouTube, esports and gaming and influencing on social media, which I know you guys have talked about, is going to have a very interesting opportunity beyond the car salesman type marketing person, because you can earn money while you stream playing video games. So there's going to be some really interesting stuff that you guys, I know you're talking about, but I'm happy to bring a perspective on that from that side if you guys ever need that. But I look at HBCUs, and what's happening is great. They just there was a big partnership with some of our friends in Atlanta with Access Replay and Community with an X instead of O, and out of Atlanta, and they are partnering with Twitch, which Twitch is the big streaming platform for gamers, and they're pushing forward to help HBCUs. And I think that's a few of us are going to be involved in that. I know we will as a nonprofit. But I'd look at also understanding the dynamic of HBCUs, having lived real close to one and spent many time at HBCU at Langston University in Oklahoma, near Oklahoma City, and seeing the difference of where my school that I graduated from in Oklahoma State, just 45 minutes north, the difference in funding and the difference in capital campaign that is there. So it's great to see organizations coming alongside and helping through donations. I think it was it somebody's wife recently, Amazon or somebody donated a bunch. Who was it?
Bezos. Jeff Bezos.
Yes. Miss Bezos, or formerly, whatever. She donated a lot of money at HBCUs. Really big, impactful thing. And I look at all the stuff in the climate happening around the world, and I look at our panel, and we look a lot alike. And I think about the opportunities we have in the climate of our country right now and our world. And I think if not now, then when? And if we've been talking about it for so long and helping, systemic inequality, then we should be definitely taking an active step to help HBCUs to help get more students actively engaged in sports and esports and opportunities that they deserve.
Absolutely. And Dan, sorry, go ahead.
Do you mind if I just jump in real quick?
Please.
Because most of the students I mentor at Georgetown are minority students, first generation college students. So I know firsthand. We have, Howard University, great HBCUs right here. Our former dean of the business school at Georgetown is now the president of Morehouse, and we have lots of HBCU grads that are in our graduate program. So I'm glad Bubba brought it up. But diversity and inclusion, which is one of the things I teach, is so critically important. And you see the lack of diversity in some of the big technology companies, especially Silicon Valley, and how Google and Facebook and the big companies are coming to HBCUs like Howard, and they're looking for engineers. I mean, there's actually a great path right there if some of the HBCUs can have esports programming and teach esports and provide the engineering and the academic background as well as the playing together, and just create a pipeline for minority students to go work at some of these technology companies where diversity inclusion is a huge issue. So thanks, Ray.
I'll throw out one last thing about, we know sports is a inclusive thing and how it can break down racial barriers. Esports can break down male, female, gender, as well as disabilities and people who are in wheelchairs and who are not. So I love that there's a lot of inclusion in esports, and it can be a big opportunity for your students.
Yeah, no question. Inclusion is so important. Jimmy, let's maybe kind of build on that, and let's tie the subject of revenue to the subject of career opportunities, because the last people to get fired in times of reorg are also the revenue generators, and then the first ones to get hired are the revenue generators. So moving forward, as you sort of look at career opportunities related to technology, related to great inclusion, disability, focused people, what do you see as some of the emerging opportunities as more content gets created and more content gets disseminated in different ways, as well as the highlights that is done by Dan's company? So how do you see this all evolving into careers?
I mean, I think on the, what's interesting is when you're an adjunct, like I'm an adjunct because I have a full-time job, and we have more of a practitioner model. I teach 4 or 5 classes, but I'm still an adjunct. And so the classes I teach are I teach real life situation, real life sports. And I also push my students to go work in the emerging areas. I went to our marketing faculty 2 years ago and said, we teach a lot of great marketing classes, but theory-based and research-based. Why don't we teach classes in social media and digital media marketing, which is what the companies want to hire. That's what the young college students are, that's what they're good at. And they said, well, you're the only one that knows it in this group, go create a class. So we created a social and digital media class that we teach in the undergrad. And that's what I'm talking about. Because, you think about companies and leagues and brands, I mean, the executives being older, they don't understand social media marketing or how that works. And that's where the students, that's where there's lots of value and creates really good job opportunities. So I also call that, the old Jack Welch calls it a G, but the reverse mentoring model. So instead of the VP or SVP or the commissioner always being the mentor to the college students can actually be the mentor to the AD and the head coach and the executive about, social media consumption and the marketing and how to use TikTok, how to leverage TikTok to grow your brand and grow your revenue. So I'm always pushing the students there. And then the other part that's, more and more popular, Ray, this from your teaching is teaching online. And so I'm not a huge fan of teaching online because I'd much rather, I want to be in front of the students, but we're forced to teach online right now. So, try to get as engaging as possible. But that being said, I mean, you have a bunch of college experts here. One of the things that I've been doing at Georgetown is recruiting more and more international students, right? And I think we take for granted how big the college industry is. But, I do a lot of business in Brazil and London and Tokyo. College sports simply, it's not a business there, right? There's not big NCAA football, NCAA basketball. And, there's so much opportunity because college sports is so big. So I think there are ways that like people on this panel could teach 2 or 3 classes just on the administration of college sports. So that's where the online really comes in handy. So again, and as you said at the top, revenue generation, I always tell the students, if you can make money, you're going to be good, right? So, whether going in sales or business development, partner management, what do you want to call it? If you can help generate revenue, you're going to be good. But so going back to it, I just, my saying is I tell the students goes social, global, or mobile. Whether you're getting into social, whether you're going into global opportunities where there's a need for that. And, we created a program in Doha, Qatar a few years ago to teach the people in the Middle East, North Africa region about the business side of sports to prepare them for the World Cup. And so our students that are interning here in the U.S. have as much experience as a lot of people do working in big events outside of sports. So those are some of the emerging areas that we push our students.
Dan, what do you look for when you're hiring these people in the kind of rapidly growing, evolving company that you've built?
Yeah, it's funny. It kind of dovetails what Jimmy is saying. Like we are looking for people that already, they've already built up a social media following and a social media book of business, right? From the time they were 10, 11, and 12. So, by the time they get to college, they're seasoned veterans at social, right? So being able to tap those things is great. And I think one of the things that you could you could help these kids to kind of move forward, or these young adults move forward, is to help them understand the business side of that, right? So what does it mean? You know, how do you model these things for cost per million? How do you model these things for advertising revenues? How do you monetize your content outside of, you know, a live stream? How do you package that and sell it into sponsored material? How do you sell it off to the eSpats of the world to license it out to journalists and magazines and stuff like that? So there's a lot of opportunities in that, to where these kids are already trained in social media. They probably know it better than everybody on this panel, right? They know all the tricks, all the little tools. So bringing them and educating them into, how do I take this passion, this understanding of the market conditions, and turn it into a job, right? That's what you guys can really serve them. And so for us, that's what we look at. We look at people that already have a following, that come in and tell me what to do, right? Like, this is how you should do it. You got to talk to this and do this, and connect here and do this. And you can tell instantly whether they're plugged into that network, right? It doesn't mean they have to have a massive following, but they have to understand the dynamics, because they're watching it and they're seeing the trends, and they follow it. And so that's kind of what I look for. I'd like to spin back just one more thing to the HBCU stuff that we talked about, because I didn't get a chance. One of the things, we're working with Butler. So Butler University, and I think it's a really interesting program, and a great thing that Erica is working on over there is having these outreach programs, to where they put in all the equipment, they put it into a building in the local area. They invite the kids in to come and play and to experience technology that they couldn't normally afford, right? And I think that's fantastic, because it's almost too late when they get to college and try to say, well, why don't you do engineering, and why don't you do this? You have to get them early so that they find that passion and say, wow, you know, this is great. I get to play on this computer. I'm looking at this. I'm looking at all the networking stuff. I'm seeing how all this stuff works. And then at the end of the day, we send them back a highlights package. So their day at the office, right, or their day at the event, it comes back, and they can share that out to social, and they can share it out with their friends. And it starts to get them impassioned around technology and working in the community. And it's great for the schools. It's great for the brand. It's great for the community in general, and gets kids excited about things. And, you know, sports tend to be a route for a lot of young kids. And I grew up a very poor kid, so sports was a route. But also because my school happened to have an Apple IIe computer for all of us old guys. And so I found that, right? And I love the tech, and I've been a tech guy ever since, right? So I think we have to expand our footprint there. I think when we go to the HBCUs and trying to do inclusivity, it has to be earlier, right? We have to get them interested in these things. And I think schools can play an incredible role with that. Sorry.
No question. So let's, we have about 8 minutes left. So let's talk about moving forward from a marketing, activation, and revenue perspective. I'll open it up to the floor to any of the panelists to discuss what you see coming as some of the important trends beyond the ones that we've discussed.
Well, I think the hard part is right now with the economy struggling through the COVID is, like you guys pointed out, if you can raise money, or if you can bring in resources, you're going to be a hot commodity. And, you know, having those relationships, people often forget that relationships take time to cultivate. And, you know, when you friend raise before you fundraise, and you really, you know, dive into those relationships. And for people that are successful at communicating, people who have a personality that have no problem asking for money, or have the ability to bridge two different worlds for one, you know, common goal, those are the successful people that are going to have jobs in the future when it comes to generating dollars.
Absolutely. Anyone else, Tom?
Ray,
moving forward?
I'll jump in there. You know, we touched on this earlier, but, you know, with the revenue being down, with fans not being at your game or TV money being down, you got to cut back on the expenses. And I think that's where Kiswe has really hit the sweet spot with the leagues and networks. I mean, we signed 40 plus partners over the last few months. It's really the fact that you can produce events remotely. All of a sudden, you don't have to have that huge production truck at the event. You don't have to fly talent. I mean, think about how expensive it is to fly talent. You know, you got to fly them around, hotels, the meals, T&E, all that goes away. Like, you need the cameras there at the event, but you can actually just produce everything remotely in the cloud. And so this digital production that a lot of people saw as a year or two away, all of a sudden what it's done is accelerate to now. So going forward, it's probably going to be a hybrid of the old traditional model and the current model. But it's not only that, it's trying to find solutions for, as these events are being played without fans, what can you do to engage the fans? So just jumping real quickly into music, we did an event with BTS, which is the biggest K-pop band in the world. They had a concert in mid-June. They couldn't go on tour. How are you going to make money? So we did this virtual concert with them. We had 760,000 fans streaming in from 109 different countries. And not only was the band playing to their fan base, but the fans were able to interact back to the band. And so we had these light sticks the fans could hit so the bands could see where they're coming from. They had 125 million interactions in just an hour and a half. And we're talking to a lot of the leagues and networks exactly about that, about going back and forth. So I think if you're able to show the clients that you can cut back on the production costs and reduce expenses, you would think that there'd be a very, very willing audience.
Absolutely. Tom, where do you see all this going? I mean, you sort of have the unique perspective of being both at Power 5 schools and, Group of 5, mid-majors, et cetera, and then also Learfield, a rights holder, in addition to your current role. What do you see as some of the compelling things coming down the pike in the future?
Yeah, I think people are, certainly from a sponsorship perspective, they're looking for unique opportunities to connect to new people, especially young people. And I think about our example used about esports in our conference, and I think there's going to be an explosion of opportunities here over the next couple of years for people that understand how to make that work in a college and university setting. We have 2 or 3 schools that absolutely know exactly what they're doing. I've got 4 or 5 that kind of dabble in it a little, and I've got 3 or 4 that have no clue what they're doing. And they desperately need an influx of young talent to make this work. And so I think there's going to be an awesome set of opportunities for people that know how to plug into this space in the future at the college and university setting. And then there's going to be a whole other set of opportunities to connect brands around the world with that group. And so I look at it and think of most of the people that are making the serious decisions on this at a campus level are over 50 years old. And so most of them, like me, don't have any clue how this works. So we need those 20 to 25-year-olds right out of college to help us figure out how to make this work. I think it's our responsibility as leaders in this industry to make that connection happen, to be smart enough to know when to ask for help, and also to say, I don't know how this works, but design this in a way that engages our students, that engages our faculty, our alumni base, and oh, by the way, can we engage the outside community to help bring in revenue and to make a better connectivity to the future. And so I see that from an esports thing being a really important piece. As far as college athletics goes, we got a long road to hoe between today and when we can bring back the full stadium experience that we all love and trust and know. We got a ways before we're going to be able to connect brands that way.
No question. The future is going to be interesting, but maybe opportunity because of disruption, as is always the case. I'd also like to just open it up to the panel in general. We've maintained just about everybody that started, so thank you. So I'd love to have some closing thoughts on advice to both those, as you described, Tom, beginning their careers, but also some people that may be pivoting and taking some of their skills and trying to do something a little different with it.
Right. I'll jump in there. I think for Tom, I think you tied everything we talked about. This is like a really good path for the Big Sky, especially with it being on the West Coast. And, it's all about putting butts in the seat, right? A school is just like a plane. You got, and so there's so many students in Asia that want to study in the U.S. and going to school on the West Coast is easier and more attractive. And you think of where esports really exploded was in Asia. It's really Korea in 2000 when it really took off. So I think that's a complete win-win where you can tie in the popularity of esports, online teaching, esports together and create a really, really interesting path for Big Sky. So, just as a case study, I think, Big Sky and online teaching and esports and emerging areas all ties together pretty well.
Yeah, and just to follow on to that, Jimmy, when I was back in school, and I think it's probably still true in a lot of places today, is you've got this break between athletes and the rest of the student body, right? And now you've got this place where you've got the student body, when I was a kid, the gamers and the nerds and the geeks that have built their own culture and built their own competitive world and are all competing. And I think if you can bring those two worlds together, it unites them because you no longer have the sports that are in sports and the other guys, right? Like they can play together. You build a community. and you build your brand. And like you said, you need to engage the students, the faculty, your alum, the fundraisers. You need to bring that all together. So it's really about your brand, right? So making sure that you bring your brand, your school's brand into the world, right? Because like Jimmy said, like Korea and Asia, the growth in esports is unbelievable. So if you can bring that all together under your brand of gaming, and this is, the Cowboys or whatever it is, right? And you bring it all together, I think you can really grow under esports. And especially when you're lacking content right now, you need something to bring kids together, to keep them committed to the community, to keep them cheering for the brand, to keep them cheering for the colors. And right now, esports is the only horse you get to ride. So that's where I would put a lot of resources right now.
I'll throw in that I'm happy to speak to any school administrators about esports and the benefits of esports, because there's a lot of old guard who perpetuate, like we do in society, that gaming is bad. And I have plenty of data that I would love to show any of your administrators or anyone really. Our role as a nonprofit is to support disenfranchised students in low-income areas, but we also work on esports literacy, digital citizenship, and diversity inclusion. So anything you guys need, I am happy to support or provide anything. You can find me on LinkedIn right there in the chat. And if you need me to do a presentation with any of your administrators, I'm happy to, because esports is definitely where it's at right now. And it's sexy. It's only sexy. It's only a $2 billion industry. Video games as a whole is 160 billion. And all of us are gamers because we play on our phone. Just want to throw out that you're all gamers, by the way, already.
That sounds great. And Dr. Parker, if you wouldn't mind closing, that'd be great. Given CSMG principals, all academics as well, maybe you can just kind of close with some wise words to everybody as someone that ran both academic and athletic verticals within college.
Well, first, let me say thank you to CSMG and all the people that participated here today. Really appreciate the opportunity for us to all collaborate and share this information. But I am not a gamer. But what I have learned is, if you're not in this business right now, you are missing out. So get involved, find ways to engage and to empower and employ your student athletes, your individuals, because like I said, it is a collaborative effort for everybody. There, diversity and inclusion exists. The constant communication, the IT intuition that we all need, that many of us lack, it provides that. So if you can get involved in esports in any type of shape, form, or fashion, do it, because I'm starting to learn that myself, and it truly is an innovative and way to collaborate with everyone.
Thank you, everybody. This has been an absolutely incredible panel. Really appreciate everyone's perspective, giving of your time so generously and of your insights so thoughtfully. Look forward to seeing everybody. We have 2 more installments coming. Actually, 1 more installment. Tom, feel better. Thank you. And one more installment coming. I apologize on some of the changes in media. Everyone stay safe and stay well.
Thank you.